Ja, meine Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste, ganz herzlich willkommen hier im Körber-Forum. Schön, dass Sie da sind. Schön, dass Sie uns den Vorzug gegeben haben vor den vielen Weihnachtsfeiern, die im Moment stattfinden. Wir freuen uns sehr. Ja, wir wollen heute mehr erfahren über das Leben der Menschen im Iran, Menschen zwischen Isolation und Hoffnung. Das ist der Titel unserer Veranstaltung heute. Und ein kurzer Hinweis, bevor wir loslegen. Wir werden die Veranstaltung heute auf Englisch machen. Das heißt, wenn Sie lieber auf Deutsch zuhören möchten, dann wäre jetzt ein guter Moment, sich Ihre Kopfhörer und Übersetzungsgeräte aufzusetzen. Und für die Viewer im Livestream, die ich auch ganz herzlich begrüßen möchte, der Livestream wird im Originalton übertragen. So, das war die Vorwarnung. Jetzt wechsle ich ins Englische und sage nochmal a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Nora Müller. I head the International Affairs Department at Körber-Stiftung at our Berlin office, and I'm very happy to navigate us all through this evening tonight. So, in Iran, people continue to live between isolation and hope. The cry for freedom, for women's rights is still there. I understand that there's a...
Geht's ein bisschen lauter?
Geht's ein bisschen lauter? Ich frage unsere Kollegen von der Technik, ob es ein bisschen lauter geht. All right. Okay. Just people didn't hear. All right, so yeah, the cry for freedom is still there, the cry for women's rights as well. I understand that some of the social restrictions are easing when it comes to the hijab of women, but, and that's a very big but, repression remains very harsh, above all when it comes to political dissent. At the same time, ordinary people in Iran are on the receiving end when it comes to the regional tensions, when it comes to the effect of tougher sanctions, the effect of even outright military confrontation, which we've seen in the summer. Many Iranians want change, yes, but what they don't want is the regime to be toppled from the outside. So the picture is very complicated, and there are a number of questions, tough questions for us Europeans and also for the international community. So together with our guests, whom I'll introduce in a second, we will discuss the current situation, the domestic situation in Iran, and also the country's regional role and what all of this means for the people in Iran. Now, for these questions, I couldn't imagine a better panel than this one. A very warm welcome to our two speakers. I'll start with Mariam Ibrahimi. Mariam was born in Tehran. She's an Emmy Award-winning producer and director. She now lives in Sweden, in Stockholm, but she still has very close ties with family, friends in Iran. Obviously, she's worked on a number of films and documentaries, one of them being No Burqas Behind Bars. That's really a very impressive and very moving story about Afghan women living in a women's prison in Afghanistan. So a very warm welcome to you. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm equally happy to also welcome Armin Rassim. He's an investigative journalist and filmmaker based here in Hamburg, works for Panorama, for Arte also. His focus is primarily on international conflict, on migration and also extremism. He has reported from a wide range of countries, from the Middle East, also from Washington, D.C., and he also won the Grimme Prize, in fact, for a story, a report on the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, what both of them, and a warm welcome to you as well. Sorry. Now, what both of them have in common is they are sort of co-producing, co-working, if you will, on a documentary series on the history of Iran. That series will come out next year. It's 4 parts, so something to look forward to already. Now, before we jump into our conversation here on stage, I will briefly say how we're going to organize this. We will have here's my script. We'll have 2 blocks of discussions here on the panel, each 25 to 30 minutes, and then afterwards you will have the opportunity to ask questions and to chime in. Yeah, let's get this started, Mariam. And I wanted to start with you and really look at the domestic situation in Iran at the moment. And this is not a happy story, unfortunately. The situation is very tense. I talked a little bit about the regional backdrop, but there are also some domestic factors at play that we have to look at. So it's been 3 years now, I think, since the death of Mahsa Amini, the young woman that was killed and that sparked the Women Life Freedom uprising, an uprising that was put down with a very heavy hand by the regime. And then there is a weakening economy, an economy very much under strain in Iran. And there's also something not a lot of people know about. That's the fact that Iran is very much a frontline state when it comes to climate change. And the country has just been through a very bad draft, I think the worst draft in 50 years or so. So all of this together makes for a very, very complicated situation. So let me start by asking you, Mariam, what does all of that mean for the lives of ordinary Iranians?
Of course, it's really, as you mentioned, it's a very tough situation, but I can say that there's a kind of hope that since the day that Mahsa Amini was murdered by moral police in Iran, Iran is not the same country. You see that, I mean, a lot of women without veil coming to the street and nobody can arrest them, nobody can harass them. And this is not official that they have put away this rule. It means that officially they can arrest these women that they don't have, but it means that they have this encourage that coming and be against the rules that the Islamic regime has imposed to them. And this is why, because 3 years ago, when this terrible, things happened, and many people after that were killed in the street brutally, and many other young girls, not just Mahsa Amini, Nikasha Karami, Sarina, a lot of names of young people, a lot of young people that lost their eyes because they were shot in eyes. So, but there was a kind of, this body of resistance that had formed since many years. It means that the blood came to this body, and they couldn't stop it. It is raising, and it's not visible. It's not that you can say, for example, oh, there is a committee, or there is a group, there is a party. No, it was in the heart of the society, and after that, it was like that. Even the people who were faithful to the system and they believed that they started to understanding that half of the society are women, and even the many religious people is starting to respecting the choice of women. And this is very good and positive. But as the other side is that, Iranian regime still exists, and all these sanctions, which is terrible, and it's mostly on peoples, it's the pressure on people. Everyday life is getting more difficult in Iran. So this is also so much tension and so much pressure, even on Iranian regime, that it's changing the environment, that they cannot really start to arresting people, to pressing people, because the situation outside is so sensitive. And if they continue, anytime it can just, people again coming to the street and start protesting.
I wanted to ask you about that, Mariam, because you said, the protests have changed the country. It's not the Iran it used to be before the uprising. What's now the prospect of this movement? The regime is still there, as you said. It uses very repressive measures. So what is what's going to happen to the movement?
I mean, the movement exists. What is this is that maybe we don't see, we don't hear, but many of our great activist Iranian women are inside the prison. You see that the second Nobel Prize winner, Narges Mohammadi, she's in the prison. A lot of, journalists, activists, they are inside the prison, but they are working. A lot of, movement, labor movement, women movement, student movement, they are helping each other, and they are a lot of community. For example, political prisoners that they are underground, forming that to justice resist and keep going. And this is why that this body of resistance is forming and getting stronger and stronger. This is why that if we think that why Iranian people don't want an other foreign, country coming to, change the situation, because this is like a death of all this process that has formed during these years. This body is going to be stronger and stronger if people help each other. And it's not that we see every day. We see every day that they get arrested women, many other women go in front of the prison, and protesting. I hear every day all around the country that how people, like a network, helping each other, that the voices come out. And the amazing thing is this social media. Before, for example, during 80s, they executed thousands of young people, thousands of students, thousands of activists, Iranian activists, brutally. And nobody heard about that. For 2 decades, it was silence. But now, when one person is arrested, it is in social media, and people help each other to just give the voice to them. And this is why this is very important to see that this movement is still alive. After that day, after all those protests, Iran is not the same country. This is definitely clear.
So, Mariam tells us the movement is still alive, that body of resistance, which you mentioned, Mariam, is still very active. What's your take on what the Europeans can do, should do? Have we helped the movement enough, or were we basically bystanders and kind of abandoned those movements or this movement in Iran?
The influence that Europe can actually have is quite limited, I think, because over all the years with the sanctions, I think right now the volume of trade that Europe is responsible for with Iran is like 5%. So it's 5% of Iran's economy that is somehow depending on the trade with Europe, and that it costs political influence if you have those sanctions, because then the Iranian regime is going to say, what can they take us more if we already have practically no trade or very little. So in general, I think the Europeans aren't the most important partners for Iran. It used to be different, but China has become very, very important. And of course, in that time, I remember when the protests were going on, many activists, also here in Germany, called for Europe to put the Revolutionary Guards on the terror list. Hasn't happened. That's maybe something that could be done more, but at the same time, as Mariam says, general sanctions tend to affect the lives of normal people more than the stability of the regime or the wealth of people in the regime. So with sanctions, you have to look exactly at what you're doing and who you are really damaging and who you want to damage.
Which is super difficult to craft sanctions in a way that, you know, they have no sort of collateral damage. But you mentioned regime stability, Armin, and I wanted to ask you about that. From your point of view, how stable is that regime? I mean, it has suffered some pretty heavy blows from the outside. The supreme leader seems to be pretty frail, but he's still around. So how stable is the regime?
I mean, it's hard to tell from the outside, but I think we haven't seen very big frictions inside, let's say, the security apparatus or inside the military. There are no signs of that there will be somehow a coup from inside or something like this. I think what happens when a country gets attacked from the outside is that as you say in German, they close the rows or they become closer to each other again within the system. I think that has happened. Also, ideologically, it has confirmed that Israel and the US are big enemies, and they want to somehow pose a threat to the country. So I think with the attack, it hasn't damaged the stability of the system, which is in general it has a big problem with legitimacy in the population. But this attack, I think, hasn't helped to destabilize. Rather the opposite.
It's very interesting what you mentioned, this effect of kind of closing ranks or rallying around the flag in the face of an external threat. Mariam, and I wanted to ask you, I mean, what does that mean for the opposition or, you know, the women's movement? Is it that people say, okay, now that we're under pressure, now that there is this sort of threat from the outside, we'll stand with the regime no matter what, even if we don't like them? Do you see that effect?
No, because then it's like seeing that very black and white. We have to see with the transparency. It's not that if we don't accept that Israel, because a lot of that women activists in Iran, they didn't. I mean, they officially announced that we are against the attack of Israel to Iran. It doesn't mean that, but you know, it's something that we cannot really. If the agenda is freedom for women inside the country, but at the same time, if other country, Iran, let me just give you an example. Iran has been 100 years, you know, involved by all these foreign, troops coming to Iran, exploiting Iran, invasion that Iran has been, you know, during the last 100 years of history of Iran. So Iran has a very traumatic, I can say it, a collective trauma of foreign involvement inside the country. So when I say this body of resistance is forming, there is also a collective knowledge is forming that during our history, we have always get damage from outside. So how can a foreign troop coming, a foreign country like Israel coming and save now in the middle of, you know, this freedom movement? But at the same time, I understand there are a lot of pressure on people. Many people are tired, fed up because of the economic, because of the sanction that you mentioned, that is mostly pressure on people. But, you know, war, we had experience of 8 years of war during the 80s. We have this long history of, as I say, exploitation and invasion of foreigners in Iran. So I don't think that it's really easy that we say that because we demand we ask for our demands and we want to save the country in this way, so, okay, this is the solution. No.
So what then is the solution? I mean, Armin tells us that, look at let's look at the outsiders. I mean, the Europeans. There's not so much that they can do. What is your wish? What should outside powers in the West do, or maybe abstain from doing?
It is interesting question. It's also, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm not political analytical, and I'm not. But what I see is, I was born in Iran. I grew up in Iran. It's just something that, as you say, it's maybe just a wish. But what I wish is that we just give more possibility to this very, very great potential that exists inside Iran. All these young people, all this movement, to just give the voice to them more, to just focus on them. In any case, I am Iranian woman here in Europe. You invite me, I talk about them, but why not open this to Iran, more Iranian people inside Iran, to hear their messages and to just, in some way, give support to them, because as I say, there are a lot of parallel movements forming in Iran. Artist movements, labor movements, women movements. And you see the social media is full of activists that are sending their message just by video. And you see, this is the revolution that we are waiting for. That. This is the revolution.
This is the revolution, you say, and you also say that there are many different groups that are active. So what can change look like in Iran? I mean, is it going to be incremental? Is it going to be revolutionary? What do you see?
It is interesting, because revolution is a little bit difficult word, because we have this very bloody, terrible revolution in 1979, that Islamic Republic come after. And we have still paying the price of that revolution. So revolution is very difficult for Iranian people. At the same time, they have this, I think every individual in Iran has become like a knight, like a person that wants to save the country in some way. There is a revolution inside every individual. But at the same time, because we have this historic trauma, that post-revolution was very hard for many people, massive executions, arrests, killing people. So this is always escape. But we see a lot of protests happen also during the last years, when people, but still, if I want to, my hope is that we have this big egg there is a chicken inside that is pushing all the time, that is, you see the crack of this egg, and suddenly this chicken maybe comes out. This is something that, if we want to achieve this democracy, if we want to achieve this freedom, this chicken should be mature to come out from the egg. Otherwise, it's broken, the chicken inside the egg is dead. So this is very important, that everything goes smoothly with the balance in all society, with all movement, and not be forced from outside.
I mean, what's your vision of change in Iran? Is it also a little chicken and egg?
I think it's the most difficult question about Iran. We can talk easily 90 minutes about what not to do, but the difficult question is what to do and how change can happen. I agree with Mariam that, of course, Iran has a traumatic experience with the revolution. For many who wanted something else, who participated in the revolution but imagined something else, the democratic groups, leftist groups, they all gathered together for this revolution. But what we have to think about always is that there's a really important point about Iranian history, but what Mariam mentioned before is that we have a long history of foreign domination, and there's a wish for self-determination. That was actually one of the main reasons for the revolution in the first place. And this experiences of Russian, of British, and also American influence it has caused this counter reaction. So we have to have always have in mind that Iranians want to be treated equal on eye level and not dominated. When Netanyahu says women life freedom and takes this slogan and says, now we are bombing you, please go on the streets and topple your regime, that's not the way that's going to work. I think what Mariam's trying to say is really to support the society, and also when there are sanctions, be careful on who they reach in the end, because people who are almost starving, I don't know how much power they have to think about politics. So I think there has to be a connection with Iranian society always. It shouldn't be completely isolated.
And what are your scenarios when it comes to Iran's future? Do you see change, or do you see stagnation, more of the same? Do you see deterioration even when you look, let's say, 5 years ahead or so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, economic-wise, it's deteriorating all the time. Mm-hmm. That's also maybe part of the answer to your first question. What's the situation at the moment? I think really high pressure, high inflation, high unemployment rate. So of course that all sums up to dissatisfaction in society for two reasons. One is ideological, but one is economical. And what do I see in 5 years? It's hard to tell, but I think one option I see is, of course, that the regime stays like this, and economic-wise, everything gets worse. We will also have another U.S. president at that time, so maybe things that were going in the direction of a nuclear deal, maybe things could change again. But it's always, like in this 46 years, it has always been one step ahead, 2 steps back, 1 step ahead, 2 steps back. It could go on for a while like this. And in terms of regime change, I mean, from the outside, it's only possible with a full-scale war, which I don't think the US will be willing to do, and Israel is not able because they don't have the troops. And it's personally, not, for me, I don't think it's desirable because it would mean really flatten at least Tehran, but also other parts of the country. But the other option is somehow within the system there will be a change, a coup, maybe military, but I don't see that on the horizon.
Well, thank you so much. Our immediate scenario for the next minutes is opening this for your questions and your comments. You know the rules of the game here at Körber-Stiftung. Please briefly introduce yourselves. Please also say who your question is directed at, and please do remember that every question should end with a question mark, and please also remember that time is of the essence and that there are many more other questions, so do be crisp and concise. My colleagues are here having their microphones, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and the mic is gonna come to you. And we have a gentleman over here in the rear part of the hall. The floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Jürgen Greiner. I have a question to both of you. The real government is one side, but there are revolutionary guards. Can you describe the role and who might be mightier than the official government?
Thank you very much. Important question. Mariam, would you like to go first?
Honestly, I didn't understand the question.
So the question was about the Revolutionary Guards and their role in the system, also vis-à-vis the government. Where are the power centers? Who's stronger?
It's a very interesting question, thank you. But it is also very difficult to answer because I think if I am right, because you are more, have more knowledge about that, but the thing that has happened in Iran is that before, I remember in 80s, Revolutionary Guard was a very powerful militia that was separate from the whole society, and their task was to protect the revolution. They were the power that were formed in the very beginning of the revolution, maybe, the first months. But after the war, they started to be a part of every system in the society. They were not just the military to protect in the revolution. They took, over the economy, a lot of institutions. So they are melting in different parts of the society and decentralized. But they have power in different, institution and different part of the system. So I don't know how can I, but they are right now. The Revolutionary Guard is not the Revolutionary Guard that was founded in the beginning. Rather, it's I don't know how find the right, but this is a network of a lot of illegal, underground networks inside Iran dealing, it's more commercial. And many people who haven't been in Revolutionary Guard before, just coming and working for them, ordinary people. So it's coming a combination of ordinary people and people who are faithful to the system. This is why it's very difficult to really realize how is the situation of them today in Iran.
Would you like to add?
Yeah, you gave the answer, I think, at the end of your own question. It's kind of a shadow government. Of course, they have a lot of power, and they're also acting even outside Iran. The conservative part of society, of course, somehow, you saw it when Soleimani, the head, was killed by the Americans in 2020, I think, or 19. Yeah. There were hundreds of thousands of people also on the streets because one of their heroes was killed. So there are people who support them and think that this radical element of the system is actually protecting the country. They are super powerful because they have economy, big companies, even banks within their control. So these are, and this is also one part of the answer why the regime is stable, because some people, and not so few, really benefit from it, and they would lose everything if the system collapses. So they're also fighting for their lives.
Mm-hmm. Let's give there's a question over here. The mic is coming.
I'm living in the north of Hamburg, and there we have a consulate from Iran, which was closed recently, but still there are regularly demonstrations, very friendly, very nice people. And I went to these demonstrators and asked them, what is your target? What will you think, what will happen in the future? Who should overtake it? To make a war is something, but what comes after the war? We have seen that in Iraq there was a war, American won, but what is after that? Everything was open. And they said, it is the son from the Shah, he could overtake in case of a change. Is that something with the population? What are they thinking about this? Is it something idiotic, or what is it?
Thanks very much for the question. Mariam, your turn.
It's very difficult answer because Iran is a society of diversity. We have so many, people with different, aspects and different expectation for the future. But if I understood right, there was a supporter of Reza Pahlavi that they were maybe dreaming that attack happened and the war happened and Iran be free, if I understood correct.
And he would take over.
He will take over. I mean, maybe it's a wish of many people, but it's not wish of all Iranian people. So, so many people can take the flag and go and say and dream about that. But as we see, for example, during the 12 days of the war, attack to Iran by Israel, I mean, maybe it was an opportunity for many Iranian people, but despite all the suffering that they had during 4 decades, more than 4 decades, close to 5 decades, all the pressure that they had after the revolution, they just stand with their country. They didn't go to the street because the country was most important for them. And war was not something really acceptable to the country be attacked to maybe they be free. Otherwise it happened. There were a lot of, announcements from outside to invite people to come to the street, but it didn't happen. So it doesn't mean if a group of people wish that, it is the wish of all Iran.
I think the question was, what do people in Iran want? And the honest answer is nobody knows, because there are no independent polls. There is no possibility to independently research on the opinion of the people. But yeah, of course, you saw and also still see when there are demonstrations here in Hamburg from the royalist Iranians. They have the picture of Reza Pahlavi, who himself always said, or used to say, he doesn't want to be a Shah. He wants just a transition. He's a transition to a democracy, maybe. But his supporters are pretty clear in what they want. They want the monarchy back. And I think Iran has been, like, when you go back to the beginning of the 20th century, 1906, there's been the constitutional revolution. Then there's been the Prime Minister Mossadegh in the 1950s, who wanted to actually tell the Shah to stick with the constitution and not act as a head of state, but as a monarch in a constitutional monarchy. And he was toppled by, of course, in the end, by people in Iran, but supported in a coup d'état, supported by the US and the British. And that was the result, that the Shah became an increasingly autocrat leader. And I think the revolution then 25 years later, in 1979, was mainly a revolution against a monarch and against a monarch that is supported by foreigners, by the West. And of course, people are very tired of this system, and probably they think, or many people think, everything else is better. But I wouldn't understand why we should go back to a time that has already, we've seen it, and the reaction to it was a revolution to a monarch. Nobody can really tell what the people in Iran want, but there's for sure a big part that doesn't want this.
So monarchy is not necessarily the way forward for Iran. So let's take one more question before we go to the regional part, and I do see a gentleman over here.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, so let's take the two questions together.
Norbert Müller-Blanke. I think this is a very interesting theme we are talking about now, and for us here in Europe, we are thinking about democracy in a way we did not do it 20 years ago. We do it now. Yeah, we see all other countries, we see our neighbor countries, we see our own country, we see the United States. What do you think? Is there possibility, or let me say, some say it's a difference between citizens living in a city or village people. Yeah, this is, I think, something the same here and everywhere. What do you think? Is there a majority for Are they ready for democracy, or would they be for democracy, or is there no majority for that?
Thanks for the very concise question. Let's take the lady's question here in the first row, and then you can. Nee, Sie können Ihre Frage sofort stellen. Sehr gerne.
Darf ich meine Frage in Persisch stellen und
Dann müssen die Kollegen hier übersetzen.
میتونم سوالم میشه شما به فارسی به انگلیسی ترجمه کنید؟ ممنون میشم. راجع به حرفاتون موافقم، اما دو تا نکته رو میخواستم بگم. اول ترجمه میکنین؟
Yes, she agrees with what we said, but wants to tell two more points.
یکی این که گفتین که ما اصلا نیازی به کمک خارج نداریم، در صورتی که کاملا برعکسه. ما وونشمون اینه که از خارج بهمون کمک بشه. ما دستمون خالیه. مگه ما اسلحه داریم بخوایم در مقابل سپاه و قدرت ایران بایستیم؟
But I didn't say we don't need help from outside. I didn't say that.
You need to translate for us.
نه، سوال من رو ترجمه کنین. اول سوال من رو لطفاً ترجمه کنین.
So she's saying that one of us.
Oder soll ich auf Deutsch meine Frage stellen?
Das wäre ehrlich gesagt
Sie haben
noch
erzählt,
hilfreicher,
dass
ja.
wir keine, wie heißt das, keine Hilfe von Ausland uns wünschen. Das ist genau das Gegenteil. Wir wünschen, dass von europäischen Ländern, von Amerika, von anderen Ländern geholfen werden. Unsere Hände sind leer. Wir können nicht gegen wie heißt das, Militärregime im Iran kämpfen. Seit langem sind wir protestieren, aber ohne Hilfe von demokratischen Ländern, also Europa und Amerika, können wir das nicht schaffen.
Punkt haben wir
gesagt,
verstanden.
unsere Hände sind leer. Wie können wir das schaffen?
Punkt haben wir verstanden. Gut, dass wir ich muss ein bisschen auf die Zeit gucken, deswegen würde ich sagen, den Impuls nehmen wir gerne mit. Das war ja nicht wirklich eine Frage, sondern eher ein Impuls, wenn ich Sie richtig verstanden habe.
Aber das hat auch, ich weiß nicht, wer das gesagt hat. No one really said that no help from outside is needed. The question is how that help looks.
Yeah, it's how the help looks like. It's. I told you many times that these women. When we talk about women movement, I say we need a lot of support inside Iran, and it's very important that all attention be for all the movement inside Iran and all these prisoners and all the people who are really asking and demanding for change. Maybe it's some misinterpretation, but it was like if it is by force attacking to Iran, you know, in some way it helped a lot because I say that maybe some people were very happy that a lot of these revolutionary guards that had killed thousands of people were also killed by Israel, or maybe some nuclear, centers was not, it's not maybe continue to their activities anymore, but at the same time, it was a lot of damage. So many innocent people also died during these 12 days. And if it continued, it was a catastrophe in this terrible economic situation that Iranian people had.
Wir kommen gleich noch. We're getting to the regional dimension. Thanks so much for the intervention.
Yeah.
We do have a question by the gentleman who asked about democracy. Is there a chance that we do see democracy shaping up in Iran anytime soon?
Yeah, when I hear that question, it always sounds like, oh, are these guys ready for democracy? But as I said before, the constitutional revolution was 120 years ago in Iran. There was a democratically elected prime minister who wanted to nationalize the oil in 1953. That was only 8 years after Germany had still the Nazis around. So the population is ready. Of course, in the villages back in that time, there were many analphabets and not educated people, and now still there's a big difference between population in the cities and in the villages. But I think in Iran now 80% of people live in the cities, I don't think there's a question about being ready. These 46 years have taught people so much about the value of secularism and of democracy. It has been the best school for democracy, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And also this social media, all these networks, help that the people education, growing and getting, the society was more open to the rest of the world. So, yeah, I think as you mentioned, it has changed a lot. And this Islamic revolution bring up a lot of good things also, not from the system. I mean, people learn many things after that, and especially that religion should be totally, separate from the governing. So this is very important that we.
I very well know cities like Tehran, Amol, and other cities, but I don't know the countryside. And so this was my question because are there more people on the countryside which are not able to have a democratic system? We have seen that, not to compare that, but we have seen that in Egypt some years ago. Yeah? We had a democratic election and...
Let's not move to Egypt, because that will take us to a totally different story.
I understand your point. You are right. I mean, it's a very big difference in a big city, for example, Tehran. Then you go somewhere in a village in south of Iran, in the border somewhere. I mean, when I traveled to Iran, the last time I traveled to Iran, it was 5 years ago. And I saw, because I have been, since 21 years, I have lived in Sweden. So I could see changes from when I was a youth and left Iran. And when I came back to Iran, I saw changes, even in small cities, towns and villages. People have become more educated, and even religious people who before, if you didn't have a job, they respect you. They understand that this is your something private for you. So we need still time for bigger change, but still I think, yes.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the very good and very passionate questions as well. We will now go to our second round. I would ask those who want to chime in to maybe park their questions for later on. And I think what has already become very clear is how much the regional sort of dynamics is intertwined with what's going on in Iran domestically. And sort of starting from that point, Armin, I wanted to talk a little bit with you about Iran's role in the region. I mean, traditionally, Iran has always aspired to be a key actor. One could also say a hegemon in the region. Now, two of its most important instruments to extend and exert influence in the region are now degraded. One is the regional proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Shiite militia in Iraq. This is one part. And then also the nuclear program was hit heavily by the Americans and the Israelis in the war in June. So I looked up what Suzanne Maloney said. She's an Iran expert from the US. She said, Iran is weaker than at any point since the US invasion of Iraq, but not so weak as to be irrelevant. Is that a fair description from your point of view, and how do you see Iran's regional role at this point?
Yeah, I think it's the right summary. Of course, it has damaged a lot the military capacities. It has damaged the proxies a lot, materially. Mm-hmm. But as you see in Lebanon now, Hezbollah has not disappeared. If you kill one leader, there will be the next, because it has an ideological foundation. This ideological foundation is the resistance to Israeli domination, to Israeli politics regarding Palestine. It's against the domination by the US. And this ideological foundation hasn't been erased, and you cannot erase it with bombs. And so there will always be the next people coming, and with Hezbollah, it's exactly the same. So I think what the Iranian government and the regime has drawn from this experience is not that they should stop what they were doing, but they should do it even better and get closer to a nuclear bomb and to proxies who can harm their enemies, because I think that's the only thing that can protect them, and it's not completely unlogical. Of course, if Iran had nuclear bombs, I don't think it would have been attacked like this. So it follows the logic. You cannot deny that logic, and they will try to do the same like before. They will try to build allies, and as I said, ideologically, this whole conflict with Israel pays in for the Iranian regime, and not only for the system itself, but even around the world. Like when I, as an Iranian or German Iranian, go and travel around the world, South America and Africa, people say, in Global South, people say, "Whoa, Iran has really stepped up against Israel, stepped up against the suppression of the Palestinians." That's an ideological war that is very hard to win with bombs.
I do want to come to Israel and the relations between Israel and Iran, and there's also, this whole context of the Islamic Republic being the only country that in its official sort of doctrine calls for the elimination of the state of Israel, and we also need to talk about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in this context. Let's do that later on. But since you mentioned the nuclear program, I mean, the big question is, what's left of this nuclear program? Apparently, it was not completely obliterated, and I keep hearing, especially from the region, voices that say, okay, a second attack is only a matter of time. Do you also hear those voices, and how is that being discussed also inside Iran?
Yeah. I mean, people in Iran seem to be always ready for the next attack. There's always, like when people want to fly from here back or plan their trip to Iran, and they already think about, it's maybe the airspace is going to be closed again. So they're checking news all the time. There's something in the air, and you have to look at both actors here. Israel is the other actor, and what Israel, the idea that Israel has followed with the Hamas, for example, in Gaza, was always like the mowing the grass. So when they grow a little bit, we cut them. Every few years, kind of a war, we cut it. Then they grow again, we cut it again, and that could be the state for the relations with Iran too. So every once in a while, an attack to damage their capacities to harm Israel, and then let it be. It's an isolated country that has potential to be very strong, but if you isolate it, it won't be so strong to harm also Israel's hegemony. So the strategy could be mowing the grass and always look when they build something, destroy it, 5 years later or so, the same procedure again.
Is that what you also hear from your contacts in Iran, Mariam?
It's really sad, but I cannot travel to visit my family, but sometimes they say, okay, maybe we can visit in neighbor countries, somewhere close, but we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe anytime they attack, and then I cannot take a plane, go back home. They are worried for things, and I see that the prices are rising and people are really poor, and the fear of this. Living in this fear that anytime you can be attacked is terrible. People really are depressed. And when I talk to my friends, they say, we don't know what's going to... I mean, they try to keep hope, but at the same time, it's a lot of pressure on them, that is hidden.
And is there, I mean, all these things cost tons and tons of money. Running a nuclear program that can also be used for military purposes is very expensive. And the same is true for all those, regional proxies. So do people ask the question, why do we need that? And aren't these funds that don't go into sort of domestic purposes that we need much more urgently?
Of course, but how can they protest? I mean, they face with the weapon. They kill them in the street. They protest for the price of the benzene gas. They shoot them. Young people that have no weapon in hand go to the street and protest. They shoot them. So, of course, but it is a dictatorship, country with a lot of money. They have this revolutionary guard that they are not. Today, they are not the same people in the beginning of revolution, but they have a lot of money and power. So they don't want to lose this money. The money and power is in the hand of minority of Iranian people. And this minority of people have control. And the rest, they cannot do anything, Of course they ask, they talk. If you take a taxi in Tehran or in anywhere in Iran, this taxi is a room like we have here. 5 people, every taxi they're talking about politics. Some people say, when does this situation change? What we are going to do in any country like Iran? Like you cannot find any country like Iran that every taxi in the metro you're sitting and people talking so openly about it, but they don't have the power to change. This is interesting that every room, public room, is like a political panel that people are talking, discussing. But yeah, the lady mentioned that maybe what I say is that to attack Iran is not correct, but I understand your point that with empty hand we cannot also fight against this power, but we have to find a better solution. Inside Iran, I don't know. It's difficult to say because we have also this experience of the, guerrilla act before the revolution that the leftist people started, or we have Kurdish people in Iran that they are also big opponents against the regime, but they don't even have the enough power to stand against the Iranian regime.
Yeah, there's a lot of diversity in Iran, and you said that, people talk about politics all the time. One thing that is always, at least, from the few times that I've been to Iran, is always discussed very, very intensely is the US, right? And Iranians have a very complex relationship with the US. There's this old joke that, when you ask an Iranian, which country do you hate most, he would say the US, and whose country's passport would you like to have most is also the US, right? So can you give us a bit of an insight into that very complex relationship, both sort of from a people-to-people level and also from a political level?
Maybe it's a little bit like that you know that the Iranian community in the US is very big, in LA, a lot of, I don't know how many.
Tehrangeles, right?
Tehrangeles, for example. So Iranians love US. It's not that they don't, but if they say we don't like US, it doesn't mean that they don't like American people or American lifestyle. I don't know. It means that because we have in a very traumatic experience of US involvement in Iran during this coup d'etat, the coup that happened in 1953, that they were involved for this democratic process. And even after that, when Shah of Iran stands and say, we don't want to sell the oil at a cheap price, stand against US, and Jimmy Carter 1 year before the revolution had a meeting with Shah, and everything was fine. The champagne, they were drinking champagne together, and after that, the Shah didn't even get access to come to the country for treatment. This is terrible. So when Iranian people see that they have been betrayed all the time in the US, this is something that hurts deeply each Iranian. And it is from very, very past, in 50s. So it doesn't mean that they don't like US. I like to travel around US. I like to go to visit my relative friends. But this is something critical that what happened in the history by United States. This is why that is. We don't like US, but yes, if they say you have the opportunity to go and live in US, of course they accept that.
They would, yes.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, and there's a lot of history involved. I mean, when we look at sort of the current political developments, I think the Supreme Leader, just lashed out again against Trump and the Trump administration and said it was not worthy of contact or even cooperation with Iran. So what seems very unlikely at this point in time is some sort of deal between between Iran and the US that some people at some point maybe were fantasizing about. So how do you see that?
I think within the Iranian political system there have always been two sides. One that wanted to negotiate with the West and have at least economic relations and some kind of wealth also from that for the country. And then there's the hardliners who say we shouldn't negotiate with them. And and it's the latter ones, the hardliners that feel now after this confrontation this year somehow that they were right, because they are saying the moment we were still negotiating with the US, their friends from Israel attacked us. Then we were negotiating or talking with the Europeans, and that night the Americans bombed. So that's what actually Foreign Minister Araghchi said after the American attack. But there is, of course, they know that they have only they cannot really confront the US. So I think in the end they want negotiations, and even the leaders of the Islamic Republic, because the most important thing, and that's what already the revolution leader Khomeini said always, is to keep the system, to maintain the system. That's the most important, and you can even negotiate with your enemy. So I think they would like to sit on the negotiating table with the US, but with the Trump administration, it's not really possible. And with Israel, the ideological gap the state of the Islamic Republic wants to eliminate and wants to completely erase Israel as a state. So how should there be an accommodation?
Yeah, you mentioned that already, and you kind of answered my question, Armin, because that call for the destruction of the state of Israel, another sort of sovereign state, is built into the sort of the state doctrine, the ideology of the Islamic Republic. And what we also hear is time and again, anti-Semitic incitement from the Iranian leadership. Do you think, is this something which is shared by the Iranian people, or is that something where they also take offense but cannot say anything against it because of the repressive nature of the regime?
First, you have lived in Iran half your life, but just from the statistics, Iran still has the second biggest Jewish community within the region after Israel. Historically, Jewish people are part of Iran. It's like Kurdish people are part of Iran, and Baluch people or Christians also. It's just another religion, but they are Iranians, and they also identify in many cases really as Iranians. What was the question again? Sorry.
So is that
If the Iranian people
is
live-
that shared, that sort of anti-Semitic incitement that we hear, and which is shocking from the Iranian leadership?
I don't think so. I mean, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up that for 18 years when I went to school, I marched on Israel flag and American flag. Every morning before going to the class and studying mathematics, I was standing in the line with hundreds of these kids and say, down with US, death to US, for 10 minutes. It's terrible, The first word that comes from a child mouth in the morning, regardless who is the enemy, a child, say 7 years old, death to Israel. But this is something you are living in a mass propaganda inside the system that is, want to fabricate, this propaganda to just manipulate and brainwash all the kids, to prepare them for the enemy outside Iran. So it doesn't mean that there is an underground life in Iran that everybody knows, that the life inside the house is very different outside the house. And everything, if even the population of Iran say in the demonstration and everywhere, it doesn't mean that they are supporting the government. Because it's like North Korea. I don't want to compare two states. Absolutely don't want. But I want to say that many times you are forced to follow their path, but it doesn't mean that you believe their path. So anti-Semitism is very, very weak in Iran, I say, because we live with Jewish people, we live with Jewish community. My parents, many of their friends were Jewish. They left after the revolution, and my father was very sad for that. So they are a part of Iran, but something that they say that we are not against Jewish because we have also a Jewish parliament member in the parliament. They say we are against Zionism. So this is different also, But of course, something that they make propaganda, it doesn't mean that the people follow that. Or a minority that belong to that system follow that.
Well, thanks for once again making the differentiation between government rhetoric and what people believe or not believe, and I think that's very important. Looking at my watch, and I do see that we're getting closer to the finishing line of this conversation, and I do want to leave enough space for questions and comments here from the audience. But at this point, I want to sort of look into the non-existent crystal ball and look towards 2026, because we're at the end of this year. So what do you think are the trends or the events that might shape Iranian politics or Iranian civil society in 2026?
Very interesting, because even thinking about that, something is changed. It's so sweet, that I start to, because it's a kind of hope that I can feel that first of all, after this, as I say, even after this war that happened, this attack to Iran from Israel's side, many things changed to Iran, and the society is more open now. But this is just a wish. I imagine that things are in some way changing, but it all depends in what is the situation of the supreme leader in Iran. If something happened to him, that the politics also in Iran is very divided. We have reformists, we have hardliner. So there is a hope that a very radical change, I don't say revolution, because we forget about this now, but something radical changes happen inside Iran that make the society more open. Not because the girls don't have way. No, we have many things that should change. For example, the political prisoners, political parties that get more room. So there is a hope that maybe in a very close future we have these changes in Iran, but still it's very not clear. It's really, it's just some suggestion that is discussed among Iranian community, in social media, that it's going to be changed if he just, something happened to him. I don't know, he die, or maybe some coup happens that he just, I don't know.
Yeah, so his health, the supreme leader's health, is kind of a state secret in Iran, but still everybody talks about it. So that would obviously be an inflection point, right? If something happened to him in 2026. But what other developments or trends do you see, Armin, for the next year?
Very difficult question. With Iran, it's very difficult to look in the future. And it depends, as I said, heavily on what happens in the other countries too. And the US won't change a lot in the next 2 to 3 years. I would also look at what happens with the succession question with Khamenei. But we also have to really see and value that the changes that the people have already achieved. What Mariam said in the beginning, that now they cannot even arrest all the women that are going without a veil on the street, because in parts of Tehran all the women are on the street.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not about the veil; it's about the whole system in the end. But still, people have achieved so much, and we have to also value that. And there is a development inside Iran, also independent of what happens outside, and the society has changed in a way that is uncontrollable, I think, for the system. I don't think it's a question of what happens in 2026, but it's a question of a bigger time scope. But what is clear is that this system has not been successful in developing the society that they wished for when they came to power.
So we're ending this part of our conversation on a semi-optimistic note.
I'm very hopeful.
You're the optimist here on this panel, Mariam. Yeah, thank you so much for now. I see hands going up. I do remember a question from a lady from the first round. Your hand is up, and the mic is coming to you.
Seit Jahren hören wir die Probleme, was gibt in Iran. Das wissen wir alle. Heute bin ich hier gekommen, dass ich die Lösung höre. Aber und die Lösung, ihr beiden weiß genau, dass man sagt, ein zweites lange Make Iran Great Again. Das ist von Prinz Reza Pahlavi. Und Irano Pass میگیریم. Wir bekommen zurück Iran. Also es gibt eine Leader für diese Demonstration, nicht für Demonstration, eine Leader zu Iran zurückbekommen, aber ihr habt gar nicht darüber gesprochen.
Und wie? Wie denn?
Hold on, we just need to translate the question or the comment rather for Mariam.
No,
Did
sorry,
you,
I forgot I have that.
You have a device,
Okay.
but the question was, what about solutions? We talked a lot about the problems in Iran. Where are potential solutions, and who could be leaders? If I, understood our colleagues correctly, who could be at the helm of the opposition, right?
Yeah. And she said it's clear who's at the head of the opposition. It's Reza Pahlavi, and it's Make Iran Great Again.
Maybe it's a little bit not relevant to the discussion, but I think it's just my idea. But one of the problems we always had is that we are always looking after leader. And this is the 100 years ago that the nation state was by Reza Shah, and we always follow that. But we have this very collective I don't know, when I say this body of resistance is formed of the labor movement, women movement, and all these opponents that together can build the country again. So leader is that we are always following the path of one person. I know your point that you feel that somebody maybe should guide people to this, but I think what I see for Iran is the best is that we have to give the more room to the parties and different political groups that together build the country and together guide or lead the country.
Well, a lot of support for that position. I mean, you want to chat? Sure.
I want to ask one question back. How would that work? How would Prince Reza Pahlavi come to power?
Also es gibt viele Parteien, die haben so also gebunden mit dem Reza Pahlavi. Also
many other parties have collaborated with Reza Pahlavi, so they would help.
Das wissen Sie schon in München vor 2 Monaten.
I think it's amazing if it's it's not about Reza Pahlavi. I'm not talking about Reza Pahlavi, but Reza Pahlavi, if it is a collaboration between different parties and they really want to make the future of Iran together, give their voice to all the group and ethnicities and religions and all classes in Iran, then it is, if it's not, because we don't need monarchy. It is after 2,500 years, okay, we did this revolution. It was wrong, it was correct, it's past. But is it correct to go back to, but if Reza Pahlavi has the role as a person who helps the transition to the democracy, why not? It's not about that I am against him, but I'm telling that this is the model that is best for Iran, that we really together, all parties, all groups, together make the Iran great again.
So we're just getting a real-time impression of political debates among the Iranian community, which is fantastic. But I had a question over here in the first row, if I'm not mistaken, and the mic is on its way.
My name is Kirsten Wohland. I want to thank especially you, Mariam, because I liked your optimism. When I look at Iran, I can't share it so much as you have it, so thank you for that. I like the idea of the body of resistance. I'm not sure about whether this is really growing and whether it's really working together. But maybe you have more information than I have. My question is, we didn't talk about the environmental situation in Iran and the environmental problems in Iran. Because I think this worsens the situation we have. And I want to ask you whether you see any solution or whether the regime is at least thinking about a solution for that.
I mean, it's so tragic because, I'm not the expert of environment, but I just follow in some podcasts, some rooms that Iranian shares their, the experience that what's happening, and that there is no water. Many of these lakes are going to be dry. I mean, it's... there is no word to say, and they have nothing to do, and it's getting worse every day. The pollution in Tehran is so terrible that the children couldn't go to school because all their focus is just to fight with the rest of the world. This is their existence. So they never think around them what is happening, So, yes, this is a really tragic, sad situation for all the country, for the environment, and it is a situation for the rest of the world because Iran is also a part of this environment. But nobody can also be involved because they have closed all this communication in this case. You know, they arrest the environment activists. They are in the jail. They are also a part of this body of resistance. This is also the thing that I'm telling, that we have these different groups together that they are building it. But they are in the jail. So many of them were killed. The animal protector, the people they are shot, and they don't know what is happening, because a lot of this smuggling that is happening by Revolutionary Guards, mafia, is happening there. So it's very complicated, and it's very difficult to, but no, they don't care. They don't care.
But especially then, I say, I really admire your optimism.
We have to have hope. Yeah. You know, I know sometimes I'm too much optimist, but if I give up, then the rest give up. Yeah. So I'm very sad. I am also traumatized. I have also many wounded, but I have to be optimist. Otherwise, we cannot continue.
I mean, you see, we have a... Sorry. Thank you. We have a clear division of labor here on that panel. One optimist, one realist.
No, I'm very optimistic. I know all my friends, why? Everything is so bad and you're so... But if you don't have hope, if you just give up, this is the end.
That is certainly true. If I may, before we go to the next question, I wanted to build on your question about climate, which I think is very important. And I wanted to throw it into your court. I mean, do you think that the issue of climate change, the more pressing it becomes, could it also be a motivation for Iran to collaborate more with other regional countries? Because it's a transnational challenge, right? And you cannot deal with that on your own.
Yeah, it could be a reason to collaborate, and it could also be a reason to have more conflict, like with Afghanistan, with the Taliban. There are conflicts about the water, the potential dams to be built, and it's not only climate change; it's also mismanagement in the country, with the wrong planning of dams, and not really planning for droughts like this year. But sure, they will want cooperation. I don't think that I wouldn't understand why the Iranian politicians, the system, shouldn't want to cooperate also with the neighboring countries to solve their problems too. Mm-hmm. Of course, they want to be stable. They want to have water in Tehran. Right now, they're talking about, like the president mentioned, that they would think about evacuating the city if it doesn't rain in the next weeks. And of course, it's not possible to evacuate a city of 15 million, but they're running out of solutions. So, of course, I think they will be willing to cooperate. But the question is the isolation and to what extent other countries will want to cooperate with Iran.
Mm-hmm. We'll follow that as well, but for now we have, I think, time for one more question, if there is any. Okay, we probably exhausted our audience a little bit, but here's one. Final question goes to the lady in the second row.
If I understand right, I'm not sure, maybe, Miss Maryam, when talk about Israel or USA as an enemy for Iran, and says that the society, the people, accept that they are enemy with Israel and enemy with USA. For example, you told that people are hate of USA since 50 years ago. something like that. But what is reality in Iran is the people are separate from the regime, and the regime has a show as a being enemy with USA or even Israel, and people in the usual and daily conversation says we know that all of them are playing, and even they don't think that are enemy with USA or Israel or not.
Yeah, I understand your point. This is maybe I miss. What I say is that maybe if we tell about the population of Iran, maybe majority are not going really so deep that what happened by involvement of US in Iran's politics 50 years ago. Maybe not 70 years ago. 70 years, I wanted to see 50, so this is 70 years ago. Maybe the majority don't think about that. I'm telling about a little bit for people who just maybe think a little bit more with the political aspect. If there is a hate to US, not US people, not US as a country, rather US policy about Iran. Or Israel policy, But I know many Iranian people, they also love US, And as you say that they are playing, but they are playing with the life and destiny of Iranian people. We are part of that country. We were living in Iran. We were, during Iran-Iraq war, Iran was totally isolated. The rest of the world sold weapons to US, Israel. They sold weapons to Iraq, and Iran was using the old weapon from Shah time, totally isolated. So I understand that this is a game, it's an industry, it's a lot of things that is behind that. But what I say is that historic experience that Iranian, maybe because US didn't really good in the two period of time, good for Iranian people, was not good for Iranian people. One is 1953, and the other was when Shah need help and support from them, they didn't open the country for him to just get treatment. That Shah was with US all the time. And this was the really big betray from the US policy. I don't want to say US as a population or people.
But famous last words.
Yeah, I don't want to have the last word afterwards, Mariam again, but maybe there's a misunderstanding. The society is completely, you have to see it completely differently than the political system, of course. But we assume that everyone here actually knows that, and the society, and especially now the generation, the young generation, Gen Z, as they say, is completely internationalized. Like they are on TikTok, Instagram, and they relate with all the world. And of course, this international connection and communication is pretty
Which
much
is great.
dominated by the West.
There is no boundaries. There is no, they are connected to the rest of the world. Also, it is also a positive part of this.
So they really also make fun about ideological pillars of the regime, such as the mandatory veil, but also the ideological, enemyship or Feindschaft with the US. Of course, you have to see that detached, but there's a skepticism from Iranian history within society that is just right, because of course Iran has been, as many countries in the global south, used as a country where you can take resources from and which you can dominate politically. And that is in the collective conscience of many Iranians, but not all. There are also many Iranians who say, for example, MIGA is a slogan, like MAGA, make Iran great again, and they say let's get the help, let's get Trump, let's get Netanyahu, bomb the hell out of the regime, and let's get the country back. There are also Iranians who say that. There's a big diversity.
Yeah. It's true.
So one thing, if it wasn't clear before, one thing has become clear, that there is such a diversity in the Iranian society, and I think we could go on for hours to discuss more issues here, but unfortunately time is up, and thank you for providing us with great insights into the current discourse in Iran and also about the regional situation. To be continued, I would say. And thank you all. Vielen Dank Ihnen allen, dass Sie hier waren. Vielen Dank für die guten Fragen und Ihr Interesse. Bleiben Sie uns gewogen, auch im nächsten Jahr. Und jetzt wünsche ich Ihnen erstmal eine gute Adventszeit, schöne Weihnachten, wenn es soweit ist, und alles Gute für 2026.
Thank you.